Let us treat you to a vintage episode of my previous podcast, We Knew the Moon, featuring Randa as a co-host.
Top up your spooky meter until we come back soon with a new season.
Welcome to the Switchblade Sisters Social Club, a true crime podcast where two sisters exploit their worst fears for your entertainment. You're welcome. I'm Dee.
And I'm Randa, and together we are the Sake Sisters. For more information, check out our website at www.switchbladesistersocialclub.com or find us on Instagram and Facebook at Switchblade Sisters Social Club.
Thanks for listening. Hi there, this is We Knew the Moon, and my name is Dee. This is the podcast where we like to talk about all things empath, spiritual, witchy, unexplained, and spooky. It's the official podcast of the Goddess Temple Twickenham. Check it out. And I'm joined again by my sister, Randa Safier Angeles. Hi.
Hi.
You are a copy and podcast editor extraordinaire.
And social media manager.
Just
to add to the list. My multi-hyphens.
Yeah. Well, we've done a bunch of episodes this season together, haven't we? And I'm so excited because I finally convinced you to do something.
Mm-hmm. You did? You always do. I
always do.
You always get there.
Well, no, to be fair, normally you're the one convincing me to do stuff because I feel like you're the more dominant sister, even though you're the younger one, the more persuasive.
No, I think I'm more aggressive. I think you're more...
That's what I meant, but I was trying to be polite.
I think I'm more aggressive, whereas you're more the slow erosion.
Well, it took years, but we got there. And what we're talking about, I'm just so excited. I always start every episode.
I'm so excited too.
So our big announcement is that We Knew the Moon will be rebranded, relaunched. I don't really know if that's the word for it, but whatever. New podcast in the new year.
Mm-hmm.
Switchblade Sisters Social Club. And some of you might have noticed that the topics of this season have been totally cuckoo bananas.
A little more sinister.
Yeah, they've gone darker and darker. I mean, I started this podcast with Tracy Pretty from The Hair and the Moon, amazing shop, and she's featured on this season quite a bit. But as I told her in the last episode she did with me, she was the bubblegum to my goth, and without her, I just went dark, didn't I? Yeah, I went to a dark place, and I mean, I'm happy there.
A happy place.
Yeah, exactly. So it just feels like we need a little bit of rebrand, refresh. We've been focusing more and more on the kind of spooky, creepy, true crime elements.
Yeah.
That is my happy place. I don't know why. Probably
we
linked.
Like a little bit of the shock factor. We want a bit of the... Do you know what I mean? Whatever that is, we want that.
I don't know. I think it's linked to my anxiety, like most things. I need to know worst case. But yes, so we're going to be launching in the new year as Switchblade Sisters Social Club. So do check us out. If you're following us on social media, we will be changing the social medias over, so you don't need to do anything differently. Probably be new channels. We haven't worked out all of the tech logistics yet, but it'll probably be a new channel on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen. So just make sure you're following us on socials to keep up to date. But yeah, I'm super excited. It took ages to convince my sister to be my permanent co-host.
We joked about it every time we do an episode. I always joke about it and tell you.
I know, and every time it broke my heart because I was like, I want nothing more.
I don't know why
you're making light of it.
Yeah, I know. I don't know why it took me so long. I should have just said yes. But anyway, I'm so happy now. I'm so happy that we're going to do it because it's so much fun. We started researching episodes, and
it's just joyous to us. I don't know why.
Yeah, it is joyous to us, and like we are literally living our best lives through this. But also, our listeners are in for a treat because we have done some serious thinking and brainstorming of ideas.
When we say we love to research,
we do. We have about 1 million degrees between us, so we do like to research, and we always cite our sources.
And we go so in depth. We pull together, we've picked a bunch of cases as well that have had sort of more recent developments. So even if you've heard podcast episodes on them, chances are there's a bunch of new shit that we will go into that you may not have heard yet. So do check us out. I wanted to, for our Patreon viewers, by the way, if you're following us on Patreon, I'm thinking that will probably swap over. You won't have to do anything. But for our Patreon viewers, I wanted to share my screen. Our cover art.
Oh, yay! Oh, I love it so much. I can't stop looking at it.
I know, it's so cute. I'm going to get it printed for us to frame on our walls. Yeah?
Yeah.
Oh, shit. I shouldn't tell you. And I should have given that to you for your Christmas present. A Christmas present you actually would enjoy.
Oh, yes, I would. Yes. Oh, my God.
All right. Okay. Well, I'll still do it. Okay.
Christmas presents. It's not always your forte as much as I appreciate.
You are the hardest person to buy for. That's
you know
why.
What? Last year, Deanna presented me with like this Jumanji box. Do you remember?
I know. You refused to take it.
I couldn't have. You know what?
Was it too creepy for you?
I know it's not that. I have my peculiarities. No, and you know how I am about like order, tidiness, cleanliness.
Okay, I'll tell you what.
This thing couldn't.
I'm gonna
COVID times, wasn't it? It was during we had COVID, so we didn't even I didn't have COVID. Jim had COVID, so we saw you outside. I couldn't fucking bring this box inside my house. It was like the fucking Jumanji box, and I had to ask you.
It was so nice with different. It was like little compartments for your essential oils, which I know you like.
Anyways. The thing is, I don't like things. But anyway, what I was going to say was, fucking hell, I forgot what I was going to say. Forgot. Okay.
Great podcasting.
Our Patreon subscribers, you are the reason we do our hair and makeup.
Yeah.
And it happens only for filming. Otherwise,
really, it does.
Otherwise, we are greasy-haired, sloppy.
Do you think I even wear lipstick on the day-to-day on the reg?
I mean, look, day before podcast filming day is hair wash day.
Yeah.
And I've put all sorts of makeup on for our Patreons peoples that we love so much. And we're going to keep it cute.
So you're welcome.
Yeah. We're going to keep putting effort in for you.
I also want to share, though, because we're so super proud of this, our tagline.
Oh.
We'd love to hear your feedback on this.
Yes,
so our tagline.
Get in touch. We got socials. Get in touch with us. We want to hear from you. Tell us what you want to hear.
Exactly. Case suggestions, any of those, let us know. So our tagline for Switchblade Sisters Social Club is a true crime podcast where two sisters exploit their worst fears for your entertainment.
Yep. Love it. And it's, you know what? It continues a long tradition of Dee telling me stories that scare the shit out of me.
Yeah.
It's been going on for a long time.
It really has. It really has. So, we've got basically 35 plus years of experience with this together, combined.
Very good storyteller.
A combined experience of over nearly 70 years of experience between us in freaking each other out.
Yeah.
And hopefully you also.
Oh, yes.
So you came to join me for this last episode of We Knew the Moon in its current format, and I'm really excited to tell you that I've not deviated from our love of creepy, spooky, weird shit.
Good.
And today's episode is going to be on cemeteries.
Yes. Do you know what? Normally, one thing I'm going to miss, I tell you one thing I'm going to miss from when we rebrand and relaunch is that, like, when I'm your co-host, the topics are surprise. I love the reveal. Whereas now that's the only one thing I'm going to miss is I love the reveal.
Maybe we need to have like a third party monitoring our topics.
Who the fuck's the third party? Who do we know who's going to...
I don't know. One of our true crime friends, just someone who like knows what we're each doing to make sure we both don't do the same topic, but it's still a surprise. Right?
And someone who's not averse to a spreadsheet.
I was going to suggest our mom, but we'll think about it. We can do this. Well, let's ask the listeners, is it fun for you when it's a surprise for the other person? Or do you literally not give a shit about this and we're overthinking and overcomplicating? Because that does happen.
Yeah, tell us what you think. Honestly, slide into our DMs. We
Yeah.
want to hear from you. We love you guys.
Yeah.
We really do. Sorry, I'm not sniffing poppers.
Oh, okay.
This is not poppers. This is migraine.
Okay. Oh, you know what that would have been good in? A
Why?
nice box for essential oils.
Jumanji box.
A Jumanji box.
Don't give it back to me next year.
No, do you know what? I've got it over there. I'm going to take pictures of it and put it on our socials
Yeah,
so
yeah.
people can see what a lovely box.
Let's have a poll. Who would want that in their house?
Okay. Well, you do the social media, so you make the fucking poll. Because I've got one going spare from last Christmas. Maybe we do it as a giveaway.
Yeah. Yes. Nobody wants this fucking Jumanji box in their house.
I mean, I have one in my house.
Okay, well.
Because I want the Jumanji box for my essential oils.
Yeah, condolences.
All right. Well, so cemeteries.
Mm-hmm. And I love a cemetery. And for those who don't know, and I think I've talked about it every time I've been on the show, I literally live overlooking a cemetery.
I know. And this is part of the reason why I wanted
now, I'm almost touching distance. Is it safe to say the cemetery is maybe like 10 meters from where I'm sitting now?
Yeah.
10 meters. There are literally tombstones. I have a beautiful view of a stunning cemetery and Chiswick flyover.
Something for everyone. Well, yeah, but this is part of the reason why I wanted to do this subject with you. So to get in the spirit of exploiting our fears, and based on what you live next to, we're talking about cemeteries today.
Good.
Haunted cemeteries, to be exact, which confused me because I was like, if you believe in hauntings, then surely every cemetery would be haunted. But I suppose it depends where you think the ghost is going to haunt. Is it going to be like one of their former locations?
Yeah, why would they stay there? Huh? True.
But it does seem like a very obvious place to be haunted, right?
Yeah, but then, like they didn't actually choose to be there though, huh? So you're right. Yeah. Why would they be hanging out there?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyways, I thought that we would start in London because this is where we largely grew up.
Oh, is this episode going global?
Just you wait. Just you wait. Okay. Are you ready?
Mm-hmm.
So we have in the past hung out in graveyards.
Yep. Camden specifically. Sitting on those tombstones, getting drunk.
In our defense, it was converted to a park. So this wasn't us being completely disrespectful.
Oh, was it actually? Was it?
Yeah, it was. They had a playground in it.
What?
Yeah.
Funny, I don't remember that playground. I do remember sitting on gravestones, drinking and smoking weed. That I do remember. The rest I don't. Yeah.
We've always kind of loved them or appreciated their beauty. In Twickenham, where I am based, there's a gorgeous graveyard outside the church on Church Street, which is really nice. Like you can sit on these benches and you can look out over the river and over Church Street. It's stunning. And, we see it all over London, don't we? Where these former graveyards have been converted into parks, like I said, and children's playgrounds, and you can still see the tombs sort of around the side, which is very weird. Like there's one in Twickenham as well on Holly Road. You can see all the sort of old tombs and then like swings stuff. So as we said, always cite our sources: spookyisle.com, which is such a fun website, and Secret London website, and culturetrip.com. So the first one I'm going to start with is Highgate Cemetery. I have to admit, I haven't been. Have you?
No, but you know what? Back in my teaching days, they used to do field trips there. English departments used to do field trips.
Don't ruin the surprise, though.
Oh, okay. That's all I know. Shamefully, that's all I know.
I'm going to list some famous residents, if that's the right word. But speaking of field trips, you and I need to go at some point because I'll show you pictures in a bit and it looks stunning. To put it in perspective, my sister and I, we've grown up in West London, south-ish West London, and Highgate Cemeteries all the way in the north, which is basically like another planet.
You could go to Paris on the Eurostar in
less time than it would take us to get there. Exactly. So, London, for those of you who don't know, not the center of London that the tourists go to, but like the entire area of the city of London where people actually live and stuff is so big that if you have a friend that moves to another part in London, you might as well say goodbye, tell them it's been nice knowing them.
Delete them from your phone book.
Do you know what I mean? Wish them all the best. Maybe follow them on Facebook so you can see what school their kid ends up going to or whatever people post on Facebook these days.
But it's over.
It really is. I mean, I tell people it takes us less time to drive across our whole country of Palestine than it does to get from one side of London to the other. So this is why we're not that familiar with Highgate. I'm just explaining. So this cemetery was opened in 1839 as one of the 7 planned to alleviate the overflowing inner city graveyards. Because the population's increasing, especially in the cities as the industrial revolution is happening. So there's more and more people, but the graveyards are staying the same size, largely. And obviously the number of bodies are just literally mounting up. They decided to make some more graveyards, some cemeteries a bit further outside of the city center, because Highgate was more suburban, in order to get more space for all of these bodies. When the graveyard opened, 15 acres was dedicated to members of the Church of England, which is the sort of predominant religion in this country, and 2 acres for dissenters, meaning Protestants or anyone that wasn't Church of England, which, you know, sums it up really. So it got to be a very popular graveyard. So in 1854, which is like 15 years after it opened, there was an additional 19 acres added. So there was a real need for more space. But looking through the pictures, I've got some pictures for you. Let me just share my screen. I'll post these on the socials. It's gorgeous. Look, this is the Circle of Lebanon.
Oh, why is it called that?
I have no idea. It's very, very Middle Eastern, because then you also have the Egyptian Avenue. How cool does that look?
Jesus
we got to go take
Christ.
pictures.
Yeah.
Most famous resident and the reason for all the school trips there.
Fucking hell, I was like, that guy looks like Karl Marx, and it is.
It is Karl Marx.
Really?
Exactly.
What's he doing there?
I can't remember why he ended up here. He's obviously not English. He must have moved to England.
Okay.
Well, we're bad descendants of communists, aren't we?
Let's go pay him a visit.
Yeah. So exactly. I really want to go on a field trip. We're going to go on a field trip. We're going to take lots of pictures. Yeah. Post them on the socials. So a bunch of people live there. Like if you Google it, the list is so long, but because I'm kind of ignorant and uncultured, I didn't know most people. So I'm going to list a few that I thought were interesting / I had heard of.
Okay.
Charles Chubb.
Okay, I don't know him. The key guy, did he make keys?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, because that's a...
I know. I was like, I know those keys.
Yeah.
Lock and safe manufacturer.
Okay.
Charles Cruft.
Cruft?
Yeah, founder of Cruft's Dog Show. Lucian Freud, painter and grandson of Sigmund Freud.
Yeah.
John William Griffith, who I didn't know of, but he's the architect of Kensal Green Cemetery.
Okay.
And I just thought it was funny that he's buried in this cemetery if he was the architect of a different one.
True.
I was like, there's a story there. You know? Bob Hoskins, the actor.
Oh, from Hook.
Yep. Alexander Litvinenko, Russian dissident, the one that was murdered by poisoning in London.
God, yeah.
Jeremy Beadle, writer, television presenter.
Oh, God. Remember that show in the 90s? We used to love his show.
You've Been Framed.
Was that it?
He was used to be framed, hasn't he, for ages?
He had another one called Beatles something.
Oh, Beatles About.
That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah, You've Been Framed, yeah.
Yeah, running theme of our upcoming podcast will be the terrible TV shows of the 90s, but also the amazing 90s films. That has been a theme of this season.
Oh,
yeah. Okay, Karl Marx, philosopher, historian, sociologist, economist. Malcolm McLaren.
Oh.
Original manager of the Sex Pistols.
Oh, yeah. Why did I think Formula One? Is there another Malcolm McLaren?
No, you're thinking of McLaren. Yeah. There's also a section for war graves, including those who could not have graves, and a fireman's corner, which I thought was cute. There are about 170,000 people buried there in 53,000 graves. Yeah, I know. That makes you stop and think, okay, some of them are family tombs and graves.
Yeah.
There, and I'll talk about this more, but there is a tradition of people buried in layers because of space.
Yeah.
Anyway, so why am I talking about this cemetery? Well, it's because it's home to a few ghost stories.
Okay.
It's said to be the most haunted graveyard in London.
Mm-hmm.
Some highlights I've put in my notes. There's a woman who murdered her own children, and she haunts the graveyard dressed in gray, calling for her children.
Oh.
All of these are allegedly, obviously. But the most famous is that of the Highgate vampire.
Okay.
Dun, dun, dun. The what? I know. So the Highgate vampire came into the media in the 1960s. This story is so cuckoo bananas.
Mm-hmm.
The first recorded sighting was by a group of young people. Let's call them youths. They were interested in the occult, probably why they're in the graveyard in the first place. Now, is this a red flag? Does it make them more suggestible? Or does it mean they're more accessible? They're more likely to be in a graveyard to witness things? I don't really know. But it was Halloween of 1968. Fun fact, today is Halloween of 2022. It was Halloween of 1968, and some graves were being desecrated by unknown individuals.
Mm-hmm.
They had arranged flowers that they stole from other graves into patterns pointing specifically to a new grave, which had been opened.
Ew.
The body had been disturbed. And I've written here, what does that mean?
Yeah, especially because it would be in a coffin, surely, no? Or no? Ew,
Yeah.
okay.
An iron cross was staked through the lid into the breast of the body. I'm kind of confused how, but apparently this was linked to the possibility of a Highgate vampire. I guess because some sort of stake, I don't know. You stake the vampires? Who knows? So later on, 2 years later, in 1970, a man called David Farrant, remember this name, wrote to the good old Hampstead Highgate Express, you know, that bastion of journalistic prowess. I love a local paper, you know, when it's like seagull steals fries from tourists and stuff like that. So he wrote to the paper, Hampstead Highgate Express, and he said he was walking past the cemetery the past Christmas Eve and saw a gray figure. Then there were a bunch of replies to this article to say that they had seen the figure too, but there was a whole long list of sightings that people had seen, right? A tall man in a hat, a cyclist, a woman in white, a face glaring through the bars of the gate, a figure wading into a pond, etc., etc. So there wasn't like a one type of apparition that people reported seeing. And you know, like what the weather's like here? It's like foggy, drizzly, like visibility is always low.
Yeah. But that's the thing. I always wonder, like, I mean, it's easy to think you see things. Do you know what I mean? Especially in the dark. Whenever people cite the same thing that they see, I feel like it's more credible.
But for some reason, as a result, word got out that there was a vampire in the area of the cemetery. A man called Sean Manchester. So we've got David Farrant, who originally wrote to the Hampstead Highgate Express, and now we've got Sean Manchester. He said he was going to hold an exorcism on Friday the 13th, March 1970.
Okay.
This was put on TV.
Okay.
And soon the whole area was mobbed by ghost hunters. The police were called in and struggled to keep the peace and to hold them back.
Wow. And this was in the 60s.
Sorry, 1970.
Okay.
That this exorcism happened. To add fuel to this fire of rumors going around about black magic and dark spirits, etc., on the 1st of August, 1970, the charred and headless remains of a woman were found in the cemetery.
Oh, Jesus. Okay.
Black magic or some kind of satanic ritual was suspected, and police actually suspected David Farrant, you know, journalist extraordinaire, Pulitzer Prize winning. They suspected him because he'd taken to patrolling the cemetery with a crucifix and wooden stake.
Okay.
So maybe people were seeing him and thought he was the vampire or vampire slayer.
I'm surprised he wasn't allowed in there at night. I thought they locked up cemeteries at night.
I don't know. Maybe they didn't in the 70s. Maybe they don't now. Who knows? We need to go and check out the gate.
They do this one here. They do, because one night there was this one guy in the graveyard like screaming and shouting. And I was like, how the fuck did he get in? Because the walls are high and they lock people in. They lock people out at night.
Yeah. Well, maybe they accidentally locked him in, huh? So this carries on, and at some point there are rumors that Farrant and Manchester are going to meet in a magician's duel in Hampstead on the Friday the 13th April 1973.
So, do you think this guy was trying to make his journalistic career?
But no, I don't think he was wanting to be a journalist. I think he was like a ghost hunter-y occultist or whatever.
Okay.
Same with this Sean Manchester, who was performing the exorcism. This clearly blew up into a big thing if it was televised.
Mm-hmm. And this was this before or after Charles Manson and all this was going on?
Hey, Google, when was Charles Manson arrested?
July 31st, 1967.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, it was in a time
where people were interested in the occult, or it was becoming sensationalized.
And cults and all kinds of stuff. Yeah. Cool. So, and these guys, don't know whether they would call themselves occultists or spiritualists or whatever they might have. They're clearly getting some fame and some notoriety based on this story. So is it in their interest? I'm not saying they did this, but is it in their interest to blow this kind of story up and to make this story have legs? This duel never happened, but how funny. How funny would that have been?
What were they going to use for their duel?
Wands? I don't know. So in 1974, David Farrant was again arrested for interfering with dead remains in Highgate Cemetery. And so for the second time in this episode, I've written in my notes, what does that mean?
I know. Stop. Just leave him alone, for Christ's sake.
He claimed it was Satanists, not him. It's like, yep, I also try to blame Satan and Satanists as much as I can get away with it. But, clearly that's bullshit. So I'm just going to wrap up this section. So who knows what was going on with the duel and the rivalry between David Farrant and the Sean Manchester. But I just want to wrap up this section with a picture from a local paper. I actually couldn't find out which paper it was. I wonder if it's the Hampstead Highgate Express again. But there's David Farrant in all his glory with his crucifix. Yeah. There's only one snag. I'm reading from it now. Hunter extraordinary David Farrant told me, I can't guarantee we will find any vampires. So began the macabre midnight hunt for the vampire among the desecrated graves and tombs of Highgate Cemetery. Count Dracula would have sharpened his fangs in eager anticipation, blah, blah, blah. So, I mean...
Well...
Right.
Quiet day. And actually, Joe, I say quiet day to Highgate that day, but this was probably like the highlight of
right
history, huh?
Exactly. So, okay, on to the next cemetery. And yes, you're right. We are going global with this episode. So this one is in Hollywood, and it is got the most Hollywood name for a cemetery ever, because this cemetery is called the Hollywood Forever Cemetery.
Oh, yeah.
It sounds so Hollywood.
Yeah. Although I never heard of it, interestingly.
I know. Well, can you name any Hollywood cemeteries?
No. Right.
So partly because it sounds exactly what a graveyard in Hollywood would be called, and partly because it gives me the opportunity to talk about a case that makes me so fucking angry. Okay. So this cemetery is supposedly haunted by Virginia Rappe. Have you heard of her?
No,
exactly. So that's part of the reason why it makes me angry.
Oh.
Have you heard, though, of Fatty Arbuckle?
No.
You've never heard of him?
No. What's his name again?
Fatty Arbuckle is like old actor, Hollywood personality.
Okay.
So, I mean, I want to start this story off by saying old Hollywood sucked.
Oh, God. Yeah.
Sucked so hard.
It was not good to women. Still isn't. But
to be honest, it wasn't that great to its men either. But yeah, for women in particular, ouch. We had Judy Garland being force-fed meth and cigarettes to keep her weight down as a child.
You know what? I only read about that recently, Judy Garland.
Terrible. And actors of all genders were on contracts with the studios. They had to sign these contracts with the specific studio. And their personal lives were so controlled that their studios had to approve marriages, births, weight, etc. So there was a really good episode on Wine and Crime about Hollywood crimes, episode 280, where they discuss how studios used to cover up the crimes of their actors. There's another one I'm actually listening to now by True Crime and Cocktails on George Reeve, the original Superman. So not Christopher Reeve.
Oh, there's another Reeve before him?
Yeah, George Reeve. No, not related, but they talk about the Superman curse because basically he was shot or he supposedly shot himself, but under very suspicious circumstances. But they talk a lot in both of these episodes about like Hollywood fixers. So there was a lot of suspicious stuff going on that just kind of disappeared, swept under the carpet, because obviously a lot of these actors and actresses were making a lot of money for these high up execs, and they basically control the town. So if they wanted something to go away, like when Clark Gable ran over someone and killed them.
Oh, didn't know that.
Yep, it disappeared.
God, why the hell is everything to do with Hollywood then and now so sinister?
It's
God.
so
fame and money.
Not a good mix.
Yeah, it turns people twisted.
Yeah. So Virginia Rappe was born, I hope I'm saying her name right. It's R-A-P-P-E. I'm going to say Rappe.
Yeah.
She was born in Chicago in 1891. Her mom, Mabel, died when Virginia was 11, and she was raised by her grand. So already, you know, that's an upsetting start, isn't it? At 14, she started working as a commercial and art model. And when she was 25-ish, she moved to San Francisco to pursue her career as an artist model. San Francisco being very liberal and artsy. She met a dress designer, Robert Moskowitz, and they got engaged. But he got killed in a streetcar accident. So this poor lady, just knock after knock, right? So after that, she moved to LA and she started getting roles in films with prominent directors and actors. In 1919, she became engaged to a director-producer called Henry Learman. They moved in together and she appeared in at least 4 of his films. I'm really ignorant in sort of old movies, so I haven't listed the films because you can Google it, and I hadn't heard of them, let alone seen them. Virginia Rappe suffered injuries on the 5th of September, 1921, under suspicious circumstances at a Labor Day party at Roscoe Fatty Arbuckle's suite at the St. Francis Hotel in San Francisco. She died in hospital 4 days later from a ruptured bladder. So at this time, she is, 30 years old. So very strange to die such a healthy young age. To give some context, by 1921, Fatty Arbuckle was making $1 million a year, which is about $16 million a year now. So he was big bucks at the time, and making money for a lot of other people as well. That's the key. So Virginia and her friend, with the fabulous name Bambina Maud Delmont, went to this party. And they were probably so freaking excited because this would have been a huge deal. Imagine going to like a Hollywood party. You're an aspiring actress, well, you are an actress, and you get invited to a party with one of the biggest stars of the time. Now, they weren't exactly best friends. They'd actually only met a few days before, but I love their spirit. They were going to go together. They were going to support each other and boost each other's morale and, you know, wing woman each other career-wise, right? And what happens later makes me love this lady Bambina so much more. I hope I'm not wrong for loving her, but I
like
love
her name.
her. Yeah. I mean, the name already helps, right? So when Virginia died, some witnesses came forward and said that she had suffered from cystitis and sexually transmitted infections, or venereal disease, as it was known at the time. So I'm assuming none of these witnesses that witnessed her having cystitis, let's let that sink in. I assume none of them were medical doctors. Otherwise, they would have said medical doctors stated that she had cystitis. And I don't really know how a layperson can witness you having cystitis. And these were all brought forth by Fatty Arbuckle and his team. So it's very strange.
Yeah.
And then Fatty Arbuckle's team also brought someone in to testify that Virginia often got drunk and naked in public. And to that I say, so fucking what? Even if she did, like, that's victim shaming.
Yeah, when they bring out like facts like that after someone's died, almost to justify.
Oh, well, they lived a risky lifestyle. Well, then they deserve to die, did they? No. Who here has not got drunk? Do you know what I mean? I'm naked in public less so, but drunk for sure, you know? Drunk in public 100 times. So, but the legend that is Bambina went to the police despite having a record for prostitution or sex work, as we would like to call it now. So she really risked not being taken seriously, because you can imagine the prejudice that she would have had against her at the time,
Yeah.
and the potential for exposing herself to public ridicule or worse, she accused Fatty Arbuckle of sexually abusing Virginia so violently that it led to her death. I would like to also point out, this is a really horrible graphic image, but Fatty Arbuckle was nicknamed Fatty for a reason. You know, I don't want to fat shame anyone for sure, and I don't think this nickname would fly today, but his nickname Fatty was due to the fact that he was a large man. And that is relevant in this story because unfortunately that possibly contributed to the death of this poor girl. So Bambina was actually never asked to take the stand because of her reputation. So it was believed that her account would not be taken seriously. She was, got in trouble for sex work. So therefore, everything she says is bullshit.
You know what? It's awful when they say people are not reliable witnesses, because, it's just this preconceived idea of what a reliable witness is,
I mean, we all know that eyewitness reports are notoriously unreliable in a lot of cases. But this is someone who was at the party, came there with Virginia, and I'm about to tell you what she claims to have seen. This is what she witnessed. Virginia had a few drinks with Fatty, and then he pulled her into an adjoining room saying, "I've waited for you for 5 years, and now I've got you." After about half an hour, Bambina heard Virginia scream. Now, if Bambina was a sex worker or had any kind of experience in sex work, I'm guessing she knows the difference between screams of pleasure and screams of pain. And also, I'm guessing she's not so innocent that she wouldn't know the difference between a little bit of like kinky behavior and something much, much worse. So she knocked on the door and there was no answer. So she kicked at the door. Legend, right? Kicked at the door. It took a while, but eventually Fatty McFuckface came to the door and he was smiling and wearing Virginia's hat. Behind him, Virginia was lying on the bed, moaning in pain. Bambina got Virginia taken to another room and got a doctor called. Virginia stayed in the hotel for a few days, and I couldn't find out any reason why, like whether this is studio pressure, like I talked about these fixers covering things up or whatever. You know how we talked about fixers kind of trying to keep all the scandals on the down low. But eventually she gets taken to hospital a few days later, presumably when she's getting worse and worse, and she died soon after of a ruptured bladder. And it does make you think, like, if she'd been taken to hospital right away, would she have survived? Would they have had more evidence even if she hadn't? I just don't understand it. It's terrible. As you can imagine, the press went wild, but what do you think they focus on? Obviously the scandal and the sex parties and the blah, blah, blah. Fatty turned himself into the police and spent 3 weeks in jail. It's like, right, okay. Fatty released a statement about the night saying that after a few drinks with Virginia, she became hysterical, in quotes. She said she couldn't breathe and started ripping off her clothes. But like, why wouldn't you call a doctor at that point? Why would you be answering the door wearing her hat, laughing?
This story sounds like bullshit.
Right? Fatty claims he was never alone with her and he found her in his bathroom throwing up. And they all thought she was super drunk. Again, even if she was, so fucking what? Now, here is where it all goes very gray. Turns out Bambina also had a reputation for extortion, but I couldn't really find very much information about who was claiming that because it seems very convenient. Apparently, she would bring young girls to parties with rich people and then blackmail them so they don't get accused of rape. So why didn't she do that then? Or maybe it went too far. I don't know. But it just, like I said, seems very convenient. And who would out her? Someone who she had been blackmailing, who suddenly got a conscience and decided to risk it, right? There's something weird about it. And even if it's true, even if she got brought to this party as some kind of honey trap, does that mean that he's any less wrong for causing her death?
Exactly. One doesn't exclude the other. That may be the case, but that doesn't absolve him.
No, exactly. So another weird fact, Buster Keaton and Charlie Chaplin both vouched for Fatty, which makes me like them less. So at trial, Arbuckle's lawyers had medical evidence that Virginia had a chronic bladder condition and her autopsy showed no marks of violence on her body. But again, why do his lawyers have this medical evidence and not evidence that's provided by the sort of state coroner? I don't know exactly how it works. I've got a picture of her gravestone in the cemetery. Let me just show you. This poor lady. So this is in the Hollywood Forever Cemetery. Yeah, it's just heartbreaking, isn't it?
Mm.
The case went to court 3 times, but Fatty was acquitted. His reputation, though, was ruined. By the way, I also got some information from an article called The Skinny on the Fatty Arbuckle Trial in the Smithsonian magazine. Oh, we cite our sources. So basically, I guess we'll never know. If it's gone to court 3 times, it's an old case.
They clearly couldn't have done the investigation they could have had she been able to go to the hospital right after the attack.
We wouldn't be looking at a murder case, probably.
Mm.
So it's just heartbreaking. So that's a case that's always just bothered me because it just sums up a lot of shit that people were going through in Hollywood at the time, right? It's like Me Too before Me Too, because Me Too has been going on forever.
Our gravestone says like 1921. It's sadly not that fucking dissimilar 100 years
Today.
later. Mm.
Exactly. Like,
you know, and it's crazy actually, the whole Me Too movement, it's so recent. Whereas what's been happening in Hollywood and every fucking other place, you know, Hollywood is just
it's like an extreme microcosm of what goes on in the rest of the world, I feel.
But you know, it's only very recent, the Me Too movement, whereas this shit's been going on for so long. And I'm sure it's still going on, despite what happened to Harvey Weinstein, you know, going to prison. I'm sure it's still fucking going on.
Yeah. That's why we need to like shout from the rooftops. We need to normalize talking about sexual abuse, sexual assault, sexual harassment, all of this sort of stuff, because it's only when we make a nuisance of ourselves that it gets listened to, unfortunately, right? If we are quiet, they sweep it all under the carpet.
I think he's one of many, Harvey Weinstein.
We know that because of all the things that are coming out. We've talked about it many times, that even when we were younger, the kind of behavior that was just totally acceptable towards young girls, right?
Yeah.
That we hope that future generations never have to have people touching them up in the street and all kinds of stuff, like a regular occurrence.
I know, all these people say, oh, this generation is so woke. It's like, no, we need this. We need this, because before, when things were, you know, when people weren't as concerned about political correctness and stuff like that, atrocities were allowed to happen.
I know. And for all those people that are like, oh, I don't even know if I can hug or kiss someone anymore. Just don't.
Yeah. And get over it. Yeah.
Is that going to fuck up your life?
Yeah. Do you have to touch people? Like, is it going to fucking hurt you to not touch that person? You know, or does it really offend you that this person doesn't want to touch you? Don't fucking touch people.
Mini rant over, and then we will resume with another one in a bit, I'm sure. So I'm going to move on to a lighter case because it only talks about Satanism and ghosts now.
So she's haunting.
She's haunting the Hollywood Forever Cemetery, apparently.
Good for her.
Poor girl. So I just want her to have the recognition she deserves. Whatever happened there, even it feels like to me.
I hope she's haunting his motherfucking ass.
Like, obviously, all of this is alleged because he was acquitted. But the most sort of benign explanation is that she was ill because of some bladder condition or whatever. And because everyone was so drunk or careless, the help that she needed was not sought quick enough. That's like the nicest explanation that could possibly be, you know? And that's awful. The worst case scenario, he allegedly killed her in a massive sexual assault that ruptured her bladder. It's like, I cannot imagine the violence required for that to happen.
Either way, I stand with Virginia.
Yeah, too. Same. Poor Virginia. And hooray to the Bambinas in the world. Making themselves fucking heard when everything is against them and when their reputation's on the line, because that is not easy either. But now I'm going to go on to a cemetery that I never heard about until I listened to an episode of My Favorite Murder, you know, one of my inaugural podcasts that I listened to that got me into true crime podcasts. It's episode 236, Like a Quilt. Have you heard of this cemetery, the Stull Cemetery?
No. I'm not really up on my famous cemeteries. I just know
apparently not.
The London ones and the Paris one.
Père Lachaise in Paris. It's a little bit outside of the center, so you need to kind of go there with an intention to go there. But Père Lachaise is amazing, isn't it?
Yay. Well, you can go see Jim Morrison.
Yeah, we talked a bit about it in the New Orleans episode because we're talking, sadly, about how people damage graveyards.
Who the fuck does that?
But they do, don't they? You know, like we were talking about Marie Laveau, who was the New Orleans queen of voodoo. She's in a tomb in a cemetery in New Orleans, and it used to be open to the public, but now you can only visit it with a tour guide because there were so many people damaging not only her tomb, but the neighboring ones.
Do you know what? I even think it's disrespectful that like the graveyard that I live like looking over, it says clearly at both entrances, no dogs allowed. Obviously, dog owners go in there, and the dogs obviously go and piss all over the graves.
Oh,
Don't let your fucking dog do that. Do you know what I mean?
Horrible. Yeah.
Like anywhere but somebody's pissing on somebody's gravestone is so disrespectful.
And don't like deface a tombstone. Leave some flowers.
Yeah.
Or a little knick-knack, you know? But yeah, so sadly that happens a lot around the Père Lachaise, Jimi Hendrix grave, but it's a gorgeous, gorgeous cemetery. It's like going to a museum, isn't it? Because those tombs. So what did I say? Jimi Hendrix, Jim Morrison. Yeah. So Stull Cemetery. I'll give you a clue as to its location. It's one of the 7 portals to hell.
Oh.
So where do you think it is?
Fuck knows with that.
That's right, Kansas.
Oh. I would not have guessed that. I was thinking, is it on the equator where it's hot?
So this could cue a lot of Kansas gates of hell jokes, but to be honest, I've never been to Kansas, so I don't really want to shit on it, not having been.
All I can tell you about Kansas is something to do with the Wizard of Oz.
Yeah.
That's all I know about Kansas.
Same. So yeah. Most of this upcoming research is from American Hauntings website. So because of this cemetery, loads of people descend on it for Halloween. Again, happy Halloween. We're recording on Halloween. When this portal to hell supposedly opens, locals obviously hate this and try to deter it, to the extent that supposedly a local even demolished the burnt out church, which is supposedly where the gateway to hell is. So what makes it a gateway to hell, you're asking? Well, the devil would apparently go through the gateway twice a year, once at spring equinox and once at Halloween. Supposedly he does like an annual tour between the 7 sites throughout the year. And those are the 2 dates that his tour is at Stull Cemetery. It's weird, isn't it?
I don't know who came up with this story.
How busy is Satan if he's got like, oh, it's winter equinox. I'm due at the 2nd portal of hell. Oh, not feeling it. Supposedly, this church area would remain dry even when it was raining. That's how you can tell it's a portal.
Okay.
But this rumor of the devil's travel plans became popular after an issue of the student newspaper of the University of Kansas in 1974 came out. They had an article where they talked about all of this, and by 1978, there were hundreds of people gathering at the cemetery on Halloween. Because everyone loves a bit of Halloween-y stuff, right? There's another rumor that in 1990s, the Pope redirected his plane so it wouldn't fly over the unholy ground of Stull Cemetery. Ariana Grande even visited and said she felt so ill she had to leave.
I feel like she might be a reliable source, actually.
I mean,
I can't tell you any one of her songs, but I kind of like her.
Yeah, me too.
She's like a nice girl.
Yeah. Most academics, historians, and local residents say that none of this is based in fact. The locals say they never heard any of these stories before the student newspaper article. So it makes it sound like it's just a huge prank, which is kind of hilarious. But this doesn't matter because people love a good story. And they love Halloween in the States.
Let's not let the facts get in the way of a good story.
Right? So, and a good Halloween party. So, loads of cemetery lovers, aka tombstone tourists, love that term, would come to visit and reported memory losses and strange sounds. Many would come at spring equinox and Halloween, because that's when Satan was supposed to be there. The cemetery started to deteriorate and suffered from vandalism, because people are assholes. The local sheriff started patrolling the cemetery. They started arresting people for trespassing. Those caught inside the cemetery after it's closed could face a maximum fine of $1,000 and up to 6 months in jail.
Oh,
Which is like quite a lot.
yeah, compared to some other crimes that people are committing in the States.
Yeah. Well, yeah. What do you get for 6 months in jail? That's like, oh, trespassing on a cemetery or rape. It could be either one with that sentence, right?
And I think that's even longer, 6 months than that Brock fucking Johnson. Was that his name? Brock Johnson?
Oh, yeah. How long was he in? 5 minutes?
Fucking months or some shit. Anyway, whatever.
Well, to be fair, he did have a swimming career, didn't he?
Oh, God.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh.
Anyway, that
yeah, another story, maybe in the Switchblade Sisters social club might cover it if we can bring ourselves to. Some cases, I know we cover like a lot of true crime, but some cases are so horrible that we even struggle to touch them. Anyway.
I don't even want to give that guy fucking airtime because it's a fucking horrific stain in the American justice system, the fact that, which is already tainted by shame and scandal, that guy got 3 months.
I mean, there's just no excuse for it. If those of you who don't know what we're talking about, it's a guy who was convicted of raping a girl. And again, he served about 3 months' time, which I think was mainly between the arrest and the trial. And the judge didn't want to send him to jail because he was a university student. He had a very promising swimming career.
And that's also how the media fucking reported it. Shame on fucking some of the media that reported it that way
for
too.
Sure. Yeah. So I don't know how we got onto that, but yes.
Jail time in the USA.
Jail time in the States, yeah. So yeah, you could get up to 6 months in jail for trespassing, which to be honest, for this feels like a reasonable sentence. Because if you're desecrating cemeteries, then fuck you, you deserve that. You know what I mean? They also, I'm sure no one actually got served time for it. It's a deterrent, isn't it? They also put wire fence around parts of the cemetery that were getting the sort of the bulk of the desecration. And so there's loads of crazy stories about the cemetery, but sadly, none of them are true. Like that the devil appeared to the community of witches living in the area in the 1850s and told them to call the town Stull, which then got corrupted to Stull.
I don't know if I believe that one.
Well, you shouldn't, because actually it was named after the first postmaster whose surname was Stull.
Yeah.
Makes much more sense.
That's more likely.
But why this random place in Kansas? An article came out in the 1980s saying that again in the 1950s, a stable hand stabbed the mayor to death in the cemetery in a barn, which was later converted to a church. The church was gutted by a fire. There's a crucifix in that church that sometimes turns upside down when people step into it at midnight.
Oh, they know if they weren't allowed to go in there at night.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, someone's going to get a 6-month jail term. No, I'm guessing people come to a burnt out church in a spooky cemetery at midnight. It's because they have an interest in such things. And maybe they're turning the cross around themselves.
Yeah. I get the impression a lot of these facts aren't facts.
Right. Well, the article forgot to mention that the town has never had a mayor to be stabbed in the first place.
So the whole foundation of the story is lost.
I mean, it was a long-winded story. It was like an episode of Family Guy where it starts off with one thing and goes somewhere totally different. But yeah, the basis was already corrupt. So another legend is that the devil comes here to visit the place where a witch is buried. In fact, there is a tombstone of a wittich in the cemetery, but that seems like a coincidence or perhaps the starting point of an urban legend. There also used to be a tree in the cemetery, which was said to be used as gallows for condemned witches, which is probably the most likely of all stories.
Yeah.
To be honest.
Yeah. Considering actual historical facts.
Yeah, exactly. That's the most believable. So there's also rumors a child of Satan was buried here, a child of Satan and a witch. But this sounds actually, when you think about it, really horrible because it's probably ignorance of the time and maybe this child was deformed at birth and died a few days later.
Yeah, oh, that's awful. I know, I was just going to say that. Horrible.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that was commonplace where people thought their children were possessed by a spirit or something, and actually they had either some sort of mental illness or physical condition, right?
Fucking sad.
Yeah, so basically there's a spooky cemetery. I'm sure it is spooky, but none of the stories around it seem to be based in fact. So here's the burnt out church with a crucifix that spins round
Mm-hmm.
and a big American flag there, just for no reason. Here's the Wittich, which apparently means that there's witches. Like, it's a stretch, isn't it?
Yeah.
Grasping here. I mean, it looks like a just, quite a nice cemetery,
Yeah.
to be honest. Okay, so now I've got a really fun story. I thought it was fun because it's about a whole part of the cemetery world that I just never knew about. And I don't know how I wasn't aware of this before. So it's a weird one. It brings up a topic I never thought about before, but it makes total sense when you think about it.
Mm-hmm.
Following on from what I told you about Highgate Cemetery, where the inner city cemeteries were getting more and more overcrowded and they needed to move the bodies literally out to the suburbs.
Oh. Oh,
They
okay.
started setting up cemetery railways
Oh, Jesus, what's that?
to transport the bodies, and in some cases, the visitors, the mourners, the people coming to the funerals. So I'm going to tell you about the London Necropolis Railway
Oh,
near Waterloo Station.
okay. Oh, God, are those trains still in circulation?
It's crazy, isn't it? Don't worry. I mean, I live in Twickenham, so my train into London, and when you still live in Chiswick, I used to live in Chiswick. The train from Chiswick would go into Waterloo. So
Yeah.
I'm just like, how did I never know this?
Okay, so tell me. This one intrigues me.
Right? Okay. So it was a tradition for dead people in London to be buried in their church graveyard.
Yeah.
But these are small, and the number of dead people was growing and growing and growing, especially in London, like I said, with the Industrial Revolution and people moving from the countrysides and from smaller towns and cities to London, and with the birth rate increasing, it was just becoming such a problem.
And when are we talking?
I will give you dates in a moment, but we're talking 1800s.
Oh, okay.
It's common practice to exhume graves to make space for new ones, or to bury people on top of each other.
Yeah, why? Do you know what? I was going to ask that. Why exhume the bodies? Why not just leave them be and just bury on top?
Because they need to have, I suppose if they think like they're so old, there's not going to be any family members still coming to visit, because you need to have a certain amount of depth of these graves, right?
Okay.
This became a health issue as decaying corpses contaminated water supply, causing regular outbreaks of cholera, smallpox, measles, typhoid. Oh, I just threw up in my mouth a bit.
It reminds me of, oh God, it reminds me of the Elisa Lam story, which is so sad.
Oh, yeah.
The water tank. But anyway, okay, moving on. If
you want to know more about that, then check out our Creepy Hotels episode. Did you know the first half of the 1800s, the population of London doubled? So within 50 years, the population of London doubled from just under 1 million to more than 2.5 million. I think the whole of Greater London now is at around 9 million, but that is a massive jump.
Yeah.
It's just mind-blowing.
In how long a period of time?
In under 50 years, in the first half of the 1800s, from 1 million to 2.5.
Wow.
But during that time, the space reserved for graveyards remained the same. Think about it, must mean that there's double the amount of graves needed.
Yeah.
I don't know, how that works with lifespan and blah, blah, blah. But yeah, there would have been an increased demand for graveyard space.
Mm-hmm.
So then in 1848 and /1849, there was a cholera epidemic that killed tens of thousands of Londoners. And that completely blocked up the burial system. So already there's a problem with space. Mm-hmm. And now there's an epidemic. So corpses were literally piled high waiting to be buried. And then, of course, this increases the risk of further contamination. And even recent graves were being exhumed to make room for new ones.
Where were they storing the bodies? Oh, God, I don't want to know.
Remember, Highgate had opened in 1939, and we're talking about 10 years later. Highgate opened as a proposed part of the proposed solution for this growing rate of Londoners, basically. Mm-hmm. Along with 6 other cemeteries. And then in 1951, the Burials Act was passed, which prohibited any new burials in built-up areas of London. Because again, the spread of disease from these corpses that were not being disposed of properly. This is why you can't just have a burial in your backyard, because it needs to be done properly. Otherwise, it becomes a major health risk and environmental risk. What?
Really? Even if it's not like in water that people are drinking?
Well, yeah, but where do you think the chemicals and the molecules, whatever, leach into?
Oh God. Okay, really? That's scary.
Yeah.
Wait. So these bodies that are buried at the back of my garden, not in my garden, to clarify.
In the cemetery at the back of your garden.
Yeah.
Yes.
Is that okay?
Yeah, because
Is that
presumably
not my water supply?
Well, no, your water supply is being cleaned, but we're talking about the 1800s now.
Okay, cool. Okay.
Right? Okay, so Sir Richard Brown and Richard Spire, who I'm from this point onwards going to call the two Dicks, had another idea to further ease the crisis. They proposed, this is like a revolutionary idea. It's so clever, I think. They proposed buying a large bit of land near Woking in Surrey, not that far from where I live, 23 miles from the center of London. They wanted to open up a cemetery there called Brockwood Cemetery of the London Necropolis. The London and South Western Railway already connected London to Woking since 1838, so they could easily and cheaply transport bodies to this graveyard. The two Dicks imagined dedicated coffin trains carrying 50 to 60 bodies each, running late at night and early morning when the trains weren't running. And then the mourners could get the regular passenger train to the cemeteries for the funeral.
All sounds very logical.
Right? It's genius. The Dicks calculated that the land they had in mind would hold nearly 6 million graves in a single layer, which kind of gross to think about, but
also, did cremations not happen? Was cremation not the simplest answer to all this?
I mean, yes, it probably is the simple answer to all this, but I don't think it was common practice to do that.
Oh, do you know what? I'm surprised because kind of that's a pretty fucking straightforward solution.
I don't know where religious people stand on it. Like, I know that you can be Christian and be cremated and so forth, but I think at the time it was seen as like desecrating a body. I'm not sure.
Okay.
But it definitely wasn't common practice. So for whatever reason. Yeah, so this land that they thought, let's buy this land. It will hold 6 million graves. It will relieve the pressure on the inner city graveyards. And it will be super easy for mourners to come out for the funeral on the trains already running. The two Dicks said the cemetery might be further than Highgate and other cemeteries in the sort of suburbs, but because you could get to it by train, it was actually cheaper and easier. Because apparently at this time you had to get a horse-drawn carriage to Highgate and to the other 6 cemeteries. So I imagine this to be the price difference between getting a train versus getting like a private taxi or a ride share, you know? I was trying to work out. So it's actually be cheaper to go on the public transport train further out of London than having to pay for a private car to go somewhere in the suburbs.
Yeah.
So London South West Rail, which is now, by the way, just called South West Rail, which is what runs to Chiswick and Twickenham and into Waterloo, they were worried about the impact on the normal railway service. So in the end, the two Dicks and the railway negotiated 1 train a day that would go to this cemetery specifically. The Bishop of London at the time, Charles Bloomfield, he was one of the main opponents to this kind of railway funeral idea. He said the trains were noisy and therefore disrupted the burial services, which is fair enough. But then he loses me when he says that he thought it was inappropriate for people of different backgrounds to have to share a train.
Yeah, don't like that argument.
But in June 1952, Parliament gave the two Dicks permission to proceed and the London Necropolis Company was formed. The train company rejected the idea of separate coffin trains because remember they wanted to have coffin trains running in the night when the normal train lines weren't going, bringing the coffins, the corpses and so forth. But the train company said the families would not want the coffins shipped separately. I don't know whether that's true or not. I'm not sure. I suppose it's personal. I don't know. The two Dicks soon lost power over their own company, and then there was a new board of trustees that took over. The land in Brockwood near Woking was purchased. They rented a site for the London Rail terminus. A branch of the railway line was built to the entrance of the cemetery. So you get a direct train from this Waterloo terminus to the cemetery. The The London site was picked because it was on the river, so bodies and mourners could easily travel by boat to Waterloo. The huge brick viaduct arches were converted into mortuaries, and there were also offices and waiting rooms for the mourners, because now what was happening was you get a train with the mourners and the coffin on the same train. The official opening was the 7th of November, 1854, with the first train scheduled on the 13th of November, and on the same day, the first burial, which was sadly of stillborn twins, were brought to the cemetery. At the time, this was the largest cemetery in the world, and the London Necropolis Company offered 3 funeral packages, first, second, and third, which also determined the class of railway tickets for the mourners and the deceased. The package determined what class of travel the mourners, but also the coffin got, and what kind of funeral you had. So first class funeral, I should say. You could choose any spot in the cemetery for your loved one to be buried, and you all traveled first class. Second class, you all traveled second class. It meant you had a limited choice of burial spot, and if you did not erect a permanent memorial, then the Necropolis Company reserved the right to reuse the grave in the future. Even today, when you buy a grave plot, it will be for X amount of years usually. Or you have to pay a ridiculous amount for infinity. So that's not that uncommon. And then third class funerals buried at the expense of the parish in the parish area of the cemetery. So that will be people that can't afford to pay for the funeral themselves, or unclaimed people maybe. When the train started running, they were segregated in terms of class, but also religion. So Church of England in one section and anyone else in another. And this applied to both the living and the dead passengers. This was to not stress out the mourners, and also to spare the deceased from having to travel in the same compartment as the deceased of a different social class or religion.
Wow. This whole concept is weird, but
right?
That's weird. Different packages for transport, funeral packages. That's weird. This whole story is...
It all makes sense, apart from obviously the racist and prejudiced and classist ideals here. But I mean, the whole idea of having this like cemetery outside that's easily accessible from the city center and so forth, it makes sense. But yeah, this idea of we can't even let our dead people be in contact with anyone from a different class is just bizarre. The train only ran if there was a coffin or passengers at the London terminus waiting to use it. And both the journey from London to Brockwood and later the return would be cancelled if no one was due to leave London that morning. So it only ran if there was basically a funeral. It would not run if there was a single third or second class coffin to be carried.
Oh, that's not cool.
Yeah, so basically, if you want to guarantee the funeral happens on the day that you want it to happen, you have to get the first class. Because if you are the only funeral booked and you're a second or third class ticket holder, a funeral ticket holder, it could get postponed.
So when was this again?
1800s.
Okay.
1854 was the first funeral that was held at this Woking Brookwood cemetery. The railway ticket labeled Southern Railways London Necropolis Coffin Ticket Waterloo, blah, blah, blah. Let me show you tickets. Sorry, that's what I'm trying to say. This is a coffin ticket.
God, it actually says it. Coffin ticket. Oh,
creepy, isn't it?
Even the word necropolis, kind of creepy.
Creepy, I know. So part of the London Necropolis Company was to relocate burial sites from within London to the Brookwood Cemetery. Because of the railways, updating the sewer system, and the start of the London Underground, graveyards were regularly being uprooted, literally. The first major relocation was in 1862, when they were constructing Charing Cross railway station and the railway lines around it. Part of the project involved the removal of the burial ground of Cures College in Southwark. Nearly 8,000 bodies were packed into 220 large containers and shipped to Brookwood for reburial.
Wow. Do you know what? This is a whole part of history that I never knew anything about. I don't think I ever even thought about
a
corpse storage issue. Of all the things I've worried about, this is not one of them.
Well, it's like when I worked in Charterhouse near Barbican Farringdon area. And, you know, they've for the last few years been building the Crossrail.
Mm-hmm.
And they had found a plague pit.
Oh, wait, what?
Plague pit.
Oh,
So, you know, a mass grave for people who died of the plague, because people were dying so quickly. And again, they had this storage issue of this.
Jesus.
They needed to get the bodies in the ground ASAP, because otherwise it would increase the risk of further infection and spread of the disease. And they already had this problem of not enough graveyards. So they literally had mass plague pits.
Wow. Jesus Christ. Wow.
And I was working right next to one,
Ooh.
which probably is true of anyone
yeah.
working in a big city,
yeah,
unfortunately.
Yeah.
But yeah, they'd found one while they were digging the Crossrail, whatever
I
they're
missed
doing.
that story.
Yeah, kind of gross. So at least 21 London burial sites were relocated to Brookwood in this manner. And say those were probably the lucky ones, because they moved to a sort of nice home in the suburbs, right?
It's not a bad area.
It's lovely. So in 1902, the London terminus was moved because of congestion around the station as urban development of southwest London grew and grew and grew. The new office was then moved to the other side of Westminster Bridge from Waterloo. Again, when I was I went to King's College, I used to walk across that bridge a million times, and I've seen the pictures now, and I'm like, how did I not notice that? Waterloo Station was expanded, and the original station grew and grew, which involved the demolition of the original London terminus of the London Necropolis Company. This new building, though, they moved it. They had a chapel for mourners who couldn't go to Brookwood. So now if they couldn't afford to go, or time-wise, work, whatever it might be, there was a chapel for them to say their goodbyes. Then it led down to 2 platforms lined with waiting rooms and the ticket office. You would have thought that they were on to a winner here. I don't know, maybe it was a winner, but not financially, because it makes so much sense, doesn't it? It sounds like when you think about this problem and realize that it is a problem, this sounds like the answer to it.
Yeah.
But the venture was not as successful as they hoped. The London Necropolis Company didn't get the monopoly on the cemetery railway industry that they'd hoped for.
God, what a business idea, you know?
Right?
They're very entrepreneurial for their time.
I know, but I feel like this is the kind of thing you and I could get into.
Oh, I don't know. Transporting bodies. I mean, you know, never say never. There's a price tag for everything.
Well, we now know that it doesn't make sense financially. So not this idea in particular, but they hope to carry between 10 and 50,000 bodies a year. But the average was just 2,000 bodies.
Okay.
So really under their target.
They were not meeting their KPIs.
No. Their yearly appraisals would not have gone well. So the railway shut down in 1941 when much of the facilities near Waterloo were damaged in the Luftwaffe in the Second World War. So I guess that it was damaged and they just never bothered putting the money in to open it up and rebuild it. The London Necropolis Company sold the site to the British Humane Association in May 1947. So I was just thinking, I've worked with them in the past in different charity roles. I need an excuse to get invited to their offices. I know, I want to. The 2 stations in the cemetery remained open as refreshment kiosks for some years afterwards, but then they were demolished. The site of the northern station, serving the nonconformist cemetery, is now heavily overgrown. The site of the southern station, the Anglican Church of England station, is now the location of a Russian Orthodox monastery and a shrine to King Edward the Martyr. The last railway funeral to be carried by British Rail anywhere was that of Lord Mountbatten in September 1979. And from the 28th of March 1988, British Rail formally ceased to carry coffins altogether. Brookwood is still the largest cemetery in the UK and one of the largest in the world.
But wait, what happened to those trains? Because I don't want to be sitting on one of those trains.
I don't know. They didn't actually say what happened to those trains.
Let's hope they're defunct now.
I mean, I know they have, especially recently, got a lot more new trains. So let's hope they're not the ones from pre-war coffin trains.
Yeah. Febreze is not enough to fix that problem.
You can't Febreze that shit away or sage it.
Nope.
Who knew that there were cemetery railway lines? Probably a lot of people, but I did not know. I never gave it a single thought in my youthful,
I never gave
ignorance.
the body disposal conundrum a single thought. I just assumed someone had that in hand, The council is in charge of that.
But I am going to end on saying, don't forget to check out the new podcast in the new year.
Oh, you are in for a treat. Oh, God. The topics we've got lined up and that we've started researching already, we've put some serious thought into it.
And we have, for example, one of the cases I'm going to cover, and I'm not going to say who it is about, but I have been interacting with the main police officers on the case.
This podcast is coming back bigger and fucking badder.
Yeah. And if you want to join us on that journey, then follow us and find us in the new year. Can I tell you what I want to introduce, especially because I just rooted through so many of our old pictures?
Yeah. Oh.
I want to do Throwback Thursday where we have a picture of us. I've got hundreds.
We were some funny looking 80s kids.
Yeah, we really were. And if you ever want to know the difference between kids today and kids in the 80s, these photos will answer all of your questions.
It all starts with a bad haircut.
And then it goes to
the
clothes
outfit
made by your mother. She's an amazing
designer.
Yes.
But we had DIY haircut. We actually had, we say that we had Jim Morrison haircuts. We had the Jim Morrison haircut.
We had a soup bowl haircut. We had the fringe.
And then we had the times when we cut our own hair.
And each other's hair.
Yeah.
We also, I want to say our standard uniform in the 80s as well. So our mom makes amazing clothes. She really does. Crystal Couture, follow her on Instagram. It's amazing. We were like proper tree climbing kids.
Yeah. There was not the internet. We were suburban kids until we moved here. Suburban kids played with fucking frogs.
Climbed trees, cycled to the dunes.
Yeah, cycled around places.
So our standard uniform was, picture this. Imagine a patterned fabric. Let's say Snoopy.
Mm-hmm.
Snoopy characters.
Mm-hmm.
Tracksuit bottom, joggers made out of that. Then a plain jumper in a corresponding color with one of the characters from the pattern trousers decoupaged on the front.
This was fashion. Hashtag fashion.
Oh, we were the envy of all of our school kids.
We were.
We really were.
Yeah, we did not need Benetton.
No, and we did not have it.
We also used to wear snowsuits a lot in the 80s.
Well, yeah, because we lived in Boston only for 2 years, but then we had the snowsuits, so then we had to make use of them. Yeah.
Waste not, want not was the family motto. And you will, as our listeners, be seeing these pictures. Kids on Pinterest these days look very different to the kids of yesteryear.
They look like supermodels.
Yeah.
Wearing clothes from the runway, but just mini.
Yeah. We were free range. Yeah, free range. Because to be fair, we were always covered in like nosebleeds and mud.
And mud, yeah.
Yeah. You have to entertain yourself somehow. It wasn't the fucking internet.
Yeah. We were proper latchkey kids. We were basically coming home from school and then going out, cycling, riding our bikes.
Yeah. It was character
until it got dark.
Can you imagine? You can't let kids do that now. Cycle around.
Would you ever with Che and Rio? They're
never.
6. Would you
never? Never. I don't even let people look at them.
All right. Well, thank you so much, everyone. That's the end of season 4 of We Knew the Moon.
What a ride it's been.
Yep. So don't worry. We'll be back in the new year. We're already working on these episodes. All right. Thanks, everyone. Thank you. And we will see you next year for Switchblade Sisters Social Club, which is really an anti-social club. So come join us. Bye.
Bye.
Hey there. Thanks for being a loyal listener.
Do you need a new website or want to boost your social media performance? Or do you hate podcast editing? You've tried optimizing your website and social media channels, but you're still not getting the listeners, downloads, and engagement you want?
We, the Safié sisters, love helping people with tasks that they hate. We know a thing or two about podcasts, websites, and social media, and we love working with other podcasters and business owners.
So why not head over to switchbladesisterssocialclub.com and go to our Work With Us section. We believe in collaboration over competition. A rising tide raises all ships.
Bye!